evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think a bracket is that thing next to the letter P on your keyboard.
I had to look at
that. I mean, you're not wrong.
No. That seems like a very...
I've made 5 of these up in 5 days, so... yeah, that one was
the word a bit thin.
But brackets are what we're talking about today, not necessarily the one next to the letter P on your keyboard. We're talking MLS brackets. It's that time of year again. We just released the interview with Callum Williams, where we talked about the upcoming game between Minnesota and the LA Galaxy, which is one of the games in the bracket, and I know you guys are excited. Arran and Matt are both with me here tonight. How you guys doing tonight?
Good, man.
Doing all right.
Doing well,
man.
After our technological snafus here.
Yeah, we've had a bit of an issue with that this week, haven't we? But we got there eventually.
You know what snafu stands for?
Situation normal. All... Yes.
It was actually an old military term, I guess, but what you said is correct. So.
We digress because, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Celebrity Across the Pitch Squares, the show where there are no celebrities, but at least 2 squares. On this hit new game show, hastily put together like a clip show made up of 25% new material, the Across the Pitch team will try to guess who will progress in the MLS playoff series. Bracket by bracket, we will unveil who of the Across the Pitch crew is the maestro of Major League Soccer and who is the damsel of Dumpsville. But now, your hosts, Phil Kennedy and Matt Robards, and me. But first,
make sure you guys head on over to every social media platform and give us a follow. You can find us on Facebook at Across the Pitch. You can find us on Twitter at Across Pitch, and you can find us on Instagram at Across the Pitch. That's where we interact every day, and especially on match days.
Yes. Hey guys, I've got a buzzer.
Oh, all right. is that to keep us on time here? Or?
Actually, that wasn't where I was going with it. I was just going to be obnoxious. But yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, don't forget to check out the social media like Matt was saying. And while you're over there, you can also check out, we have 2 new spin-off shows. We have Across the Gridiron and Across the Rink. The first episode of both of those shows recorded earlier this week and will be out this weekend. You can find us on Twitter at Across Rink and at Across Gridiron, and then the same thing on Facebook at Across the Gridiron and Across the Rink. So if you're somebody who's a fan of hockey or American football, or someone who's wanting to learn either of those sports, then these new shows will be right up your alley. But tonight, we are going to do a little bracketology, MLS style, and Matt, I know that you have been really chomping at the bit to talk about your bracket, so I'm going to let you get started, because I think that maybe you have some surprise picks on there.
Yeah, so I figure the best way to do this is we'll kind of just go round by round, starting in the East, then jumping to the West. And so, we'll maybe give a little bit of time just to each talk about, what we think about each game, and then, throw out who we're going to go. So,
right. Before we get into that, though, Matt, I think we need to talk about just very, very quickly, very briefly. I know you can do this because you're the wizard. How the playoff system works, because it's different this year, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So the playoff system did change this year, which is nothing new for the MLS. It's changed very frequently as more teams have been added through expansion. But this year they've gone to single elimination games as opposed to home and away for some of the rounds in previous years. We also have 7 teams in the playoffs as opposed to, I think, a couple of years ago there was 6. with the number one seed in each conference getting a bye into the conference semifinals. So that sets up 3 games in each conference for round 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now the conference finals, that's still a 2-legged home and away, correct?
Nope, everything
No.
is a one-off game. So
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that
wow.
throws a lot in there because soccer is a game of luck in a lot of ways. It's a game of a bounce here and there. So it could be very interesting this year. We might see some upsets because of that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah,
So,
I think this is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I think it's poised to, I think, be one of the more interesting playoffs of the last couple seasons for that reason, as well as I think there's, the Western Conference was so crowded this year. Even on the last day of the regular season, there were teams moving up and down. But we're going to start in the
definitely.
East. So the first game is on Saturday, October 19th at 10 a.m. All times we talk about will be Arizona time. So at 10 a.m., Atlanta is hosting New England. So we have the 2nd seed in the East, Atlanta, against the number 7 seed in the East in New England. And so what do you guys think about this matchup?
Oh, I'm just setting the timer here. We've got 5 minutes for this, okay?
All right.
Hey, let me just test the buzzer. Do we all get that? Do we all get that? All right, that's the buzzer. That's the end of our 5 minutes, and I've just taken up 10 seconds of that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna be real quick on this one, and I'm gonna say that this is a more intriguing match than what you would think of a 2 versus an 8 like this, because New England has been a team that's had such a strong second half. But at the end of the day, Atlanta, they're the defending champs. They're almost unbeatable at home. I'm gonna go with a 3-1 Atlanta win.
Wow, that's pretty solid, actually. Yeah, I don't see anything other than an Atlanta victory here. It is a cup final. Well, it's not a cup final. You know what I mean? It's a playoff game. It's do or die. So New England will probably score a goal. I think Atlanta might struggle to sort of dig in. I'm going to say 2-1.
Yeah, this game is interesting to me. I think this is one of those games where everybody's kind of riding off New England. But we have to remember who's at the helm of that team, in Bruce Arena. And he has a lot of experience turning teams around. He has a lot of experience doing these playoff runs. He's the winningest coach in the MLS. With all that said, you're looking at a team in Atlanta that has played New England 6 times and never lost. And so the last time they met on October 6th, they walked out of Atlanta 3-1 winners. I don't see New England getting a goal in this game. So I went 2-0 Atlanta to move on. So it sounds like we're kind of all in agreement there.
I think we are.
I think against just about any other team, I might pick Atlanta or New England in an upset. Let's say that New England was playing maybe a Philadelphia. I would think that maybe that could be an upset game. But Atlanta, yes, they have some new players. Yes, they have a new manager. But they're the defending champs. They've been there before. And the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is a fortress.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so then that leads us to our second Eastern Conference game of Saturday at 3 p.m., again here in Arizona. And that's the number 4 seed Toronto hosting the number 5 seed DC United.
Yes.
Now, what needs to be said about this before we kind of jump in here is DC United all they had to do was beat a 9-man FC Cincinnati team on the final day of the regular season to host this tie. And they could not do that. So both Toronto and DC finished on 50 points. The only thing separating them is that goal differential, with Toronto scoring one more goal. They're on 5 goals, and DC was on 4 goals. So that's what put them where they're at 4 and 5. Toronto gets to host this playoff game. So with that, what are you guys thinking about this matchup?
I'm not convinced by DC's run into the playoff. I think they've had some... they beat the Galaxy back in August, but that was probably the only real decent win I can think of. There's been a few draws, a couple of... they did beat the Sounders, all right, 2-0, fair enough. But yeah, drawing, especially in a match like that against Cincinnati, 9 men on the field. They've got a bonus of 2 players. How they didn't win and secure a home field advantage, I'll never know. I'm unconvinced by DC United. On the other hand, Toronto is sort of coming in with a bit of a head of steam, I guess you could say, into the playoffs. They did tie with New York City FC back in August. I beg your pardon, back in September. I'm going to say that this is probably going to go to extra time, and I think it's probably going to be 1-0 Toronto.
I mean, what I think is you're definitely on the right track with that. I mean, not only was that a 9-man Cincinnati team, but Cincinnati was the worst team in the league with 11 men, much less 9.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like DC is a team that lost its soul when it found out that Wayne Rooney was going back to England. And I mean, they certainly have the talent to beat Toronto, but on the other hand, Toronto is an experienced team. You have Washington. They went into the playoffs last year on a hot streak. It ended up not doing as well as people expected. This year, they're going in. It's a lame duck season for Rooney, who is the heart of that team, if you will. I just think it's going to be maybe a 2-1 Toronto victory.
All right.
Yeah, I think. I mean, so I look back on head-to-head competition this year, as well as other factors, and DC has just struggled this year to get to garner any sort of offense. Wayne Rooney is their leading scorer. Any guess how many goals Wayne Rooney has this year?
10.
Very close, man. He's at 11, and he's their leading scorer.
Damn, that's
the next
right.
2 people after that, Lucas Rodriguez and Luciano Acosta, both have 6. So their top 3 scorers haven't even scored as much as Carlos Vela in LA.
That probably speaks volumes about who is around Rooney and the service that he gets, rather than Rooney just getting an extra paycheck.
For sure. I mean, I think DC is a team that's struggling right now. Toronto and DC have played some very close matches recently. I mean, if you run through their head-to-head, it's 1-1, 0-0, 4-4, 1-1. So I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be edgy. We don't know about guys like Josie Altidore if he's going to be fully match fit. So I'm going to go 1-1. This is going to go to penalty kicks where Toronto will advance 4-3.
Oh, damn. That is down to the wire.
Yeah. I think this might be one where we could see an upset as far as like a higher seed being beaten by a lower seed.
It's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be one of those ones that's fun to watch as a neutral.
So that leads us in, boys, to the last Eastern Conference first round matchup. And this is on Sunday, October 20th at 12 p.m. The Philadelphia Union hosting the New York Red Bulls. Number 3 against number 6. How are you guys feeling about this matchup?
This is my upset. I think that the Red Bull, they have more experience than Philadelphia, and I feel like Philadelphia is one of those teams that had a really good start to the regular season, and they've certainly maintain their position at the top of the table, but I think they're a team that peaked too soon, if you will.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Last time these teams met, it was a 2-0 victory for New York Red Bulls. That was back in September, late September. Not that long ago, basically, is what I'm saying. Since then, they've lost to Columbus. They've lost to New York City. That's no sort of issue there, really, losing to New York City. And that was a 2-1 match. They just seem a little bit up and down for me. I don't really have much confidence in them, to be honest with you. Having said that, though, New York Red Bulls are just not looking great either. I mean, they lost to Colorado, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? They were just miserable. I don't know. I just can't pick a team here. I got nothing.
Yeah, this is an interesting one to me. You got 2 teams kind of in a completely, kind of a completely different position. You have a New York Red Bulls team that kind of looks like the New York Red Bulls team of years past, maybe not as clinical, as years past, but they still have that pressing mentality. They still have the great work rate. And then you have this Philly team that really seemed to turn things around this year from last year and years previous. It's going to be a good matchup. I mean, again, I looked at the head-to-heads, and when you look at that, you really see, I think, the importance of the home field advantage. So if we look back through their previous games, New York won in New York, Philly won in Philly. New York did beat. I mean, this is a tough one for me. It was a toss-up. I'm going to ultimately go 2-1 Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia gets it done. And this might just be the Sons of Ben documentary, kind of, in the back of my head and in my heart a little bit, wanting to see their supporters have something to celebrate.
Right.
And I just have something against New York teams. I just don't like them. I have a hard time calling them the New York Red Bulls when they play in New Jersey. So,
and if you watch if you listen to Across the Gridiron, there's a wonderful reference you make to that in there. So that was a nice little crossover there, mate. Well done.
So I'm going to go 2-1 Philadelphia. So that finishes up the Eastern.
Oh wait! I didn't do a score. Here's my thing. I'm going to flip a coin here. It's going to penalties, and that's exactly what happens in penalties. I'll flip the coin here. Tails, New South Wales. It's come up heads. Just for shits and giggles, I'm going to say Red Bulls just so I can annoy you, Matt. And it's going to be, let's go 5-4 on penalties.
All right.
I didn't give a score on that one either. I think I said that I thought it was going to be an upset, and I don't really care one way or another. I don't have any particular like or dislike for either one of these teams. Like I said, I just feel like at the end of the day, Red Bulls are a team that has been there a few more times, and I think that's going to give them an edge over the Philadelphia team that I think peaked a little bit early. I'm going to say this one goes. I'll say that the Red Bulls take this on penalties. I think it'll go 2-2 in regulation, and then the Red Bulls on penalties.
All right, so that's Eastern Conference done. Let's
guys, we haven't really gotten. That was the longest we've spoken for. I think maybe we need to bring down the time limit on this. So it's coming down to 4 minutes now. So we got down to about 10 seconds to spare on that one. Let's do this. Let's do this. All right,
let's jump to the Western Conference, boys. First matchup of the day in the Western Conference on Saturday, October 19th. Number 2 seed Seattle is going to be hosting FC Dallas, number 7 in the West. How are you guys feeling about this matchup?
Seattle.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, as strong as kind of FC Dallas came on at the end of the year, that 6-0 over Sporting KC. They did drop off against Colorado. You look at the Seattle team, veterans on that team that have been in this position before at home. In that loud stadium.
Yes.
I'm going 2-1. I think Dallas will pull a goal. I think Dallas might even score first, but ultimately I think Seattle will just overwhelm them.
Well, it's like Caleb said that this was the easiest game for him to pick.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm going to go 2-1 Seattle Sounders.
Yeah, I don't see Dallas. I think they'll probably wilt under the heat there in Seattle, so to speak, because it's not going to be particularly warm up there then. Last time they met was back in September 18, and it was a 0-0 draw. Seattle was down a man, but it was late in the game. So I think weight of numbers is probably going to be 2-0 Seattle.
I think it's going to be a blowout. I'm going to go 4-0 Seattle.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think Seattle just outclasses Dallas. I said it at I think it was around maybe the third of the way through the season when we did an MLS review show. And I said to me that Dallas was your iconic mid-table team, middle of the road. I'll stand by that. And I think that Seattle is probably one of the top 3 or 4 teams out there. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think it's going to be a blowout. I'm going to say 4-0. I'll stick with that.
All right, so that leads us to Saturday night, 7 p.m. kickoff. Number 3, Real Salt Lake hosting number 6, the Portland Timbers. And I do want to say before we talk about this, Portland will be out without Brian Fernandez, who voluntarily admitted himself to the MLS drug program. And so he will not be cleared to play until the doctors clear him. But I think this will be our upset of the first round here. I think that this Portland team is poised to make a run. You look at who they have there: Diego Valeri, Sebastian Blanco, Jeremy Abobasi. I don't know if they'll be missing Brian Fernandez that much. So I'm going to go a kind of a nervy game. And I think Portland nicks one towards the end of the match, and they go on to win 1-0.
I like that. Portland's renowned as being a bit of a playoff team. They seem to just have a head for it. I don't know. Even though you remember last year in the playoffs, they made it all the way basically, and no one fancied them at all. They could make a similar run this year. I don't think they're going to go all that way, but they're going to win this one. I'm with you on this, Matt. I think results aside, 2-2 draw against Sporting KC in the second to last outing. It was a 2-2 draw against New England. It was a 0-0 draw against Minnesota, which is nothing to be sneezed at, by the way, because Minnesota are riding high. I just have a feeling for this, and I don't know what it is. Real Salt Lake, they've been doing better than Portland has of late. I just have a feeling that Portland's going to just rise up at the right time. I see them winning. I suspect they're probably going to get a goal and then build on that, and it'll probably end up about 2-0.
Well, here's what I'm going to say is, first of all, Salt Lake has got to be the quietest third-place team of all time.
Yeah, probably right, mate.
Because, you just did not hear anything about Salt Lake all season, and then it's like at the end of the season, you look at the standings and, wait, they were third?
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that they kind of have a way of sneaking up on each other. And I'm going to kind of disagree with Matt, because I think that Brian Fernandez is a huge, huge player for Portland. It was a big... They never would have made the playoffs without him. And so I'm going to go ahead and be the guy that takes Salt Lake in this one, and I'll go. I'll say this one goes. I'll call this a 1-1 game going into the extra time, and then Salt Lake on penalties.
Fair enough.
Well, then that leads us to the only Western Conference game on Sunday. Number 4, Minnesota, hosting their first playoff game. They're in that brand new stadium up there against the number 5 squad, LA Galaxy, a team that was only separated by 2 points. So it was a very close race there in the West. What do you guys think? I'll let Phil, why don't you start out with this one, man?
Well, I've got to go with Minnesota, and Zlatan is a hard man to keep down, and certainly Minnesota historically has struggled. I think that the Allianz Field, though, is going to be a fortress. It's going to be their first playoff game. The Wonderwall is going to be singing Wonderwall after a 3-2 Minnesota victory.
I forgot to turn off the timer on the last one. I should have really done it for this one, because I know we're going to be talking long and hard about this. I agree with you, Phil. I think it is going to be a Minnesota victory. You know what? I went and watched LA Galaxy versus Houston Dynamo the other day, and Houston Dynamo walked all over LA Galaxy. LA Galaxy looked, frankly, just out of sorts. Zlatan cut a very frustrated figure, up the front there. By and large, quite ineffective. I think they look kind of, shell-shocked, actually, the Galaxy. I don't see them going any further. By contrast, you see a Minnesota team that is a team, Sure, they've got a number of big names in there, but they don't have that superstar, okay? So this is a team that works as a unit, and I think this is exactly what you need in the playoffs. This is a team built for the playoffs. I see them, especially at home in that brand new stadium of theirs, with that crowd baying, with the huge road trip for Galaxy. You know what, Galaxy might score one at the end. It'll be a consolation, but I think it's going to be 3-1.
Yeah, I think this one is interesting, and I actually changed my prediction on it. We have the newly crowned defender of the year, Iko Para, Boxall, the other center back that he looks on form, and they have a tough job ahead of them with Zlatan. But here's the thing: I think if Minnesota can possess the ball well, if they can keep the Galaxy frustrated by making them chase, it's going to benefit them, because what we see with Zlatan is he's not willing to play defense that much. And so you're then putting the pressure on the other 9 guys for the LA Galaxy. They're going to have to run more. They're going to have to spread more. And I think that's where Minnesota is going to be able to pick their shots, pick their openings. And so I think this is going to be a close one. These teams have historically played close games together, especially this year. And so originally I had this going to penalties, but the more I kind of thought about it and looked at things, I think we're going to see a close game. Again, I think LA nicks a goal, but I think Minnesota wins 2-1. And I agree with Phil. That'll be the loudest singing of Wonderwall that has taken place in that stadium.
I'll be singing with them, I have to say. I've got a very, very soft spot for Minnesota after our chats with Callum.
Right.
Yes. Not that I'm biased at all.
Well, boys, that's the first round. So let's jump to the Eastern Conference semifinals. Now we're going to have some different teams in there. So maybe the best way to go about this is we'll just run through the games from top to bottom on the brackets here, since we don't know the dates they're being played. So in mine, I'll start out. I have NYCFC hosting Toronto. I think this will be a good game. I think this will be a close game. NYCFC has looked good coming into the last part of this year, and they have an advantage playing up there in their stadium. Now, the thing about this we need to keep in mind is there could be some scheduling conflicts with the Yankees. And so what I've heard is that the NYCFC would be kicked out of Yankee Stadium and have to play their home games at Shea Stadium. So that could be interesting.
Oh, boy. What's going to happen there?
I know it, man. But ultimately, I think NYCFC beats Toronto 2-1.
You know what? I'm surprised this isn't a bigger fixture. Yeah, okay, Toronto. Well, I mean, I don't understand why this isn't a bigger fixture. You know, Toronto's doing all right this season. NYCFC is like the, Western Atlantic branch of Manchester City. I feel like there's.
Well, that's exactly it. Nobody cares about Manchester City.
Well, I think we got to remember, I mean, the New York Yankees own that stadium, you know, and they are 10% owners in NYCFC. But if it comes down to playoff baseball versus playoff, soccer, unfortunately, they're going to get kicked out.
Yeah, I mean, the World Series tickets are going to bring a little bit more money.
No. You misunderstand me, lads. I'm actually talking about the rivalry between the cities. I mean, this is like this is an inter-country rivalry. This is US versus Canada. This is the number one city in Canada versus, well, some would say number one in America, but it's number two population-wise, I think, is it? Or is it number one? What's New York City? Is it number one?
Number one, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So you got number one versus number one.
Actually.
Yeah. I don't understand how this isn't more of a rivalry. You'd think, hell no, we're going to go and beat those snow shovelers. And they're going to go, well, we're going to beat those yarn cheese down there in New York. I think this is fantastic.
Well, I think that's actually part of it, is that New York is so much bigger than Toronto that I think New York looks at a place like Philadelphia or a place like Chicago as more of a rival than Toronto.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And there's established rivalries there as well. But I don't know. I think this could be great fun. My pick for that, and I know we're running out of time here. My time is down to a minute and a half. I don't see NYCFC losing this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to agree. And now I think another thing that we have to look at is that the NYCFC, in my opinion, is still New York City's second team because
Right.
I think the Red Bulls have a bigger following and obviously a bigger history. And it's one of those things where I remember Matt and I had an episode about halfway through the season, and I looked at it and I said, I hate to say this, Matt, but I think that NYCFC is going to get the 1 seed, and unfortunately that happened, and this is where I'm going to have to say, I think NYCFC is going to get the win. They just they've got too many things in their favor. I'll go 3-1 NYCFC.
Well, in the second conference semifinal, we're going to have some different teams there. So I have Atlanta hosting Philly. I think this is going to be a close game. This is one of the matches I have going to penalty kicks. And I think what we'll see is Atlanta, Philly going 1-1. And then I'm going to say Atlanta advances 5-4 on penalty kicks.
Ooh, I see exactly where you're going with this. So this is one of these games where I know it's another one of those coin tosses. I know I got the Red Bulls in there. It's going to be an upset. I suspect it's probably going to be the same thing again here. I am going to flip the coin this time here. It's going to be Atlanta versus Red Bulls, and I'm going to say in the 86th minute that Atlanta is going to score that winning goal and will progress through.
I've seen this Atlanta versus New York Red Bulls too many times to know that if this game was at New York, that New York would win. But since it's in Atlanta, that Atlanta's going to win and fairly easily. I'm going to go 4-1 Atlanta.
Oh, damn.
So we got Atlanta moving on. All of us do. So we have the same conference final there in the East. Number 1 NYCFC hosting the number 2 seed Atlanta. And so what are you guys' thoughts on that? I personally think this is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah. Oh, it will be.
Oh,
It's going to be end-to-end. It's going to be attacking stuff.
So
it may or may not be at Yankee Stadium.
So this year alone, New York City FC, the last time they played was September 25th. NYCFC beat Atlanta 4-1. Then they played back in August 11th, and Atlanta won 2-1 in Atlanta. Atlanta won their last meeting before that 3-1, and previous to that 1-0 in New York. So, I mean, this could really go either way, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I have to say, and I think that unfortunately this is the way that it is too many times with Atlanta, and I've said many times that Atlanta is definitely one of the teams that I like to follow. And as much as I would like to see Atlanta win this game at New York City, I'm going to have to go in favor of New York City and say it'd be 3-1 NYCFC.
Phil, I'm right there with you, man. I think NYCFC wins this game. I think it's a little bit closer. I think it's 2-1 to the citizens of New York.
Yeah, I think because of that NYC, home ground advantage, I'm going to put in inverted commas here in quotations. I don't see them conceding a goal, actually. I see them probably winning 2-0.
Right on. So it looks
like
it's
going to be a great game, though. It's going to be end-to-end stuff. It's going to be scintillating football to watch. Probably the best game of football you'll see, apart from one coming up in the East, in the Western Conference. But yeah, I just think NYCFC has the quality to take that away.
So all three of us then have NYCFC in the final, meaning unless LAFC get there, NYC is going to host this thing. So let's just jump over the Western Conference semifinals. We'll go with that first game. And this is a game we all picked. We have the number 1 seed LAFC hosting number 4 Minnesota. Phil, I'm going to throw it over to you, man.
Well, oh man. So I'm going to say that when Minnesota went into the Los Angeles what was it, Bank of California Stadium and
Yep.
beat Los Angeles FC 2-0. That was one of the best 90-minute performances that I've seen all season long. And obviously, they're going to need to do that again, and to do that again and do it at a playoff level. Whew. But why the hell not? I'll go ahead and say 2-1 Minnesota.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to say since that time, there was a home game against LAFC, and that was a 1-1 draw. LAFC also has a week off, so you can bet they're going to be sitting down and watching videotape, and they're going to be rehearsing their big plays against the Minnesota side, knowing that they're probably going to meet them, and I'm sure, well, we all agree with this. I suspect that LAFC is going to be very ready for Minnesota, and it pains me to say it. I think Minnesota is going to put up a gallant fight. I don't see them outlasting a fit and rested LAFC. I think it's going to be close, but it's going to be 3-2.
So I think that the layoff for LAFC is going to be a detriment. I think we've seen that in years past.
Okay.
Where the team that is playing that first round, they're building that momentum. After LAFC lost to Minnesota at home, their run of form was not that great. They only had won 2 other games and drew every other game after that.
Right.
And this is a Minnesota team that I think is coming off the high of finishing 4th, hosting a playoff game, beating the LA Galaxy. They already know how to beat LAFC at home, and I think they get it done. I have a lot of confidence in Adrian Heath and the squad there of Minnesota. And I think it should be said that Walker Zimmerman, who came in second in Defender of the Year voting, did have to withdraw from the U.S. camp recently with a concussion, and I haven't heard his status yet, so he could be out if he doesn't pass concussion protocol, which will be a big hit. I think Minnesota wins a close, nail-biting game 1-0.
That was wonderful. I think you had your argument right there as the alarm went off as a buzzer hit. Interesting. All right.
So let's jump to the second game there, which I think we both had. Seattle hosting Portland, a derby game.
Yes.
Of great proportions. And so I'll start off this one. I love these games. I love Seattle versus Portland. It's always fun to watch from a neutral's positions because these teams just flat out don't like each other. I think this is a close game, and I think it's going to go 1-1 into penalties. And at that point, it's a toss-up. So, looking at goalkeepers, I know Stefan Fry, as far as the last time I heard, is still out injured. So if that's the case, I think that's a big blow when it comes to penalties for Seattle. And so I rolled the dice on this one because I want to see Minnesota host another home game. So I went 4-3 on penalties to Portland.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I like that. I like it. You're right, Matt. This is the best rivalry in MLS, isn't it? This is not manufactured. This is not manufactured. These two teams really dislike each other up there in the Pacific Northwest, and it is excellent viewing. So much fun. They knock 10 bells out of each other, and the last few years, going back, Timbers win some, the Sounders win some. At the end of the day, you're right, it is a bit of a toss-up, but I do think that Seattle probably has the quality over the Timbers this year. I said earlier that Timbers are good for their knockout runs, but I think this is where their knockout run finishes against a good Seattle side. Again, it'll probably go into extra time. I don't know if it'll go into penalties. I think it's going to be a very tight game. Probably not many goals scored, but I think it'll probably be 1-0 at the end of extra time to the Sounders.
Let me just throw this little stat out there.
All right. You're going to prove me wrong here, aren't you, mate?
No. Portland and Seattle played 3 times this year already. They played twice in Seattle, once in Portland, and the home team never won one of those games. So that means Portland has gone to Seattle twice this year and beat them by the scoreline of 2-1. So just kind of a little fun thing to look at. I know it doesn't tell the whole story, but Phil, what do you think, man?
Well, if you recall, I actually picked Salt Lake to come through.
Oh, that's right.
Right. Yeah. So you had Seattle, Salt Lake. So tell us about that one then. What are you thinking there?
Well, so here's what I think is Seattle is a tough place to play, but as you just proved by the fact that Portland's done it twice this season, it hasn't exactly been the fortress that it normally is. So Seattle can be beaten at Seattle. A number 3 seed over a number 2 seed really isn't all that big of an upset.
Right.
Like I said, Salt Lake City, they just keep creeping up on people. And I'm going to go ahead and pick Salt Lake City to beat Minnesota in my Western Conference final.
Damn, that'll be interesting. So, if I'm not wrong, will that be the first time both those teams will have appeared in a conference final?
No, RSL won MLS Cup in 2009, I believe.
Well, what do I know? I wasn't here.
Up in Seattle.
They've been around forever. They're like one of the original teams. So.
Well, what do I know? I should know that really if I'm talking about this shit. But okay, all right, carry on, lads.
All right, so that means in the Western Conference Final, we all 3 have a different game. So, Aaron, why don't you run us through yours first?
All right, so Western Conference Final. I have Seattle versus LAFC. This is going to be a clash for the ages, I feel. It's going to be at LA, should my predictions run true. I think there's a quality there. I mean, Carlos Vela for LAFC he's proven himself to be one of those clutch players, as you guys say over here. And I think, he's probably going to be the difference between the two teams. I can see it's going to be an excellent... If I had a choice, I would say this would be my final for the MLS Cup playoff. Oh, man. Damn, thanks for putting me on the spot there, Matt. On pure form, season form, knowing that they came first, I'm going to have to just say LAFC.
All right.
And you know what? Toss a coin up there as well. I know I'm being rubbish with my predictions here. Let's be brave and say LAFC 2-0 over Seattle.
All right, Phil. So, Phil, if I was following yours correctly, you have Real Salt Lake hosting Minnesota.
Yes.
So, who do you think comes out victorious there?
Well, this is where I think not getting that second seed on the last game of the season is going to bite Minnesota in the ass. And I think if they had Salt Lake back at the Allianz hosting a playoff game that they could get through. But I'm going to say they're going to be on such a high after beating LAFC that they're going to ultimately have a little bit of a letdown. They're going to have to go to Salt Lake, hostile environment on the road, and I think that this is where the loons and runs and Salt Lake keeps creeping along and into the championship game.
Do you think so? I don't know, man. I mean, prove me wrong, mate. I mean,
all right.
It's curious. It's a good question.
Phil, you're going to go with Minnesota's run ending. So I had Minnesota in the conference finals as well, but in my bracket, they will be hosting their second playoff game against Portland. And I think just to kind of put this in perspective, you have to go back to April 14th, 2018, the last time Portland beat Minnesota, and that was at home there in Portland. After that, it's been 3-2 Minnesota, 1-0 Minnesota, 2-1 Minnesota, and then a 0-0 draw in Portland in September. And you know what? I'm riding the Loons to the MLS Cup playoffs. I think Minnesota, if this plays out the way I think it will, I think Minnesota beats Portland 2-0 at home. an epic singing of the Wonderwall, and that means a trip to NYCFC in that brisk temperature up there in New York in November that they'll be used to.
Minnesota, dude.
I know.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
All right,
yeah. Okay.
And so I got NYCFC hosting Minnesota in the final. And so, boys, let's jump to the final very quickly here.
Okay.
We all have NYCFC, but we all have different Western Conference teams. And so, you know what, Aaron, you have LAFC in there, and they would actually then be hosting NYCFC.
Yes.
So why don't you talk about that matchup?
Okay, so we've got number one on each side. Good luck. I don't know how often they play with each other. Let me just have a quick look here. So LAFC, have they ever played each other?
Yeah, I believe so. LAFC would have.
Oh, they have.
Because they do that for sure.
All right.
Yeah, they play each other once a year.
All right. So the last time they played was back on March 17th, and it was a 2-2 draw. Guess who scored the goals that day? It was Carlos Vela, 2 goals for LAFC, and Alexander Ring, who scored 2 for NYCFC. I've got nothing to go on here apart from conference, form, I guess. And LAFC probably dipped a little bit, but, form going in, and, I say this as a ardent Phoenix Rising fan, form going into the playoffs doesn't really count for much. LAFC is going to go strong. NYCFC, beg your pardon. Yeah. All right. Let me just pull a number out of my hat. It's going to be 2-2 after full time. It's going to go to penalties. It's going to be one of those classic MLS final series. It'll probably be the one that will unite the United States of America behind soccer. It'll be the one it'll be the standard bearer where people will remember fondly back. They'll be telling their grandkids about it. I was there the day LAFC beat NYCFC in penalties 5-3.
I like it.
All right, man. So other than that, Phil and I both had NYCFC hosting this final. Phil, you had them hosting it against RSL. How do you see that game playing out?
Well, going back to that podcast that you and I had about mid-season, when I looked at all of the numbers, as I so often do, and say, as much as I hate to say it, and as much as I don't want to see it, I think it's going to be an NYCFC season. I think that Salt Lake will, at this point, have gotten about as far as they could go, and I'll say that it's going to be a fairly easy 3-1 NYCFC win at Yankee Stadium.
All right, well, I'll finish this up here. I think NYCFC hosting Minnesota. These teams have played 3 times in their history in the MLS, each winning one and drawing the other. And so I think this will be a close game if both these teams meet each other in the final. I think it'll be nervy because you have 2 teams that are relatively young compared to the league. You have 2 teams that are looking to lift a trophy for the first time in their MLS history. Minnesota trying to win one for a city that's been starved for so long. And I think their Cinderella run in the playoff comes to an end. I think this is a 1-1 through regular time, and then NYCFC goes on to win this on penalties 4-3.
Oh.
So
there'll be no disgrace for Minnesota to lose like that either.
Not at all.
No.
But begrudgingly, I think NYCFC could win the MLS Cup this year. And again, I hate New York teams. I don't know why. I just do. I just hate them.
It's because you live in the West, mate. Come on.
It just hurts. So, well, you know what, boys? That's it for this bracket. I think it's going to be a fun playoff run, and we'll probably touch on some of these games on our weekly episodes. But I want to just thank you guys for taking the time to do this. This was something I kind of pushed for, so I had a good time.
Yeah,
It was great.
fun. This is a lot of fun.
Load of fun, man. But wait, before we go, we have news across the pitch news desk.
Oh, snap.
It's your favorite coach and mine, Rick Chance's birthday. Happy birthday, Gaffer. Here's
Happy
the win on
birthday.
Friday and a late birthday present as we march on to that USL Cup.
Yep, let's go, boys.
All right, guys. Well, I had a lot of fun, and I can't wait to watch these playoff games. And happy birthday to Coach Rick, and we'll talk to you again soon. And thank you all for listening. For my brother from down under,
My mate from State 48.
Mr. Wizard.
You guys have a good night.
You too, man.
Have a great one.
Berhalter out.